Hello, my name is Brian Delgado.
I'm Joshua Mejia.
And I'm Joshua Letona.
And we're Unemployed Film Snobs. We're the snobbiest of film lovers. You like film, but we love them. And today, what we wanted to talk about in our first episode for today is, let's see, as of the time of this recording, The Exorcist just came out, and I know we just said that we're the snobbiest of film lovers, but me and Mejia have not seen the original Exorcist, but he has, so I'm going to leave it to him to talk about what he thinks about the original 1974 one, and then, yeah, we're just going to lead it from there, and I'm going to start driving to our destination while we're on the way.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of leave that, every film fan has their blank spots, right? So, like, I just saw The Godfather just a couple weeks ago, but for sure, I really wanted to talk about The Exorcist, and I know I kind of brought this up when we were talking about it earlier in our kind of pre-meetings, but what I was kind of curious about is it doesn't seem to be a movie that, one, let alone critically, is, like, doing very well right now. At least the new one, right? And box office wise is doing, like, just fine. Like, I think it's the definition of fine. I haven't seen the word flop be used, tossed around, and I kind of wanted to like really think about, like, what is the legacy of The Exorcist? You know, we've had a lot of comebacks in in sort of Halloween, like slashers and stuff like that come back, and it just seems like, for me, and I was talking about this with my partner a bit, is like, does Gen Z, or even just like people in our age group and generally, like, do they care about The Exorcist? I grew up, like, in the Catholic school, so, like, The Exorcist kind of became like a really synonymous, like, thing of, like, to talk about in classes at least once a year, especially during October. And it just, like, I feel like I have a lot of recognition for it, but it really comes through like the lens of people who are so much older and saw it at that time. And so, like, you guys haven't seen it, and I'm like, I don't know, I kind of want to toss it back and be like, is there a reason you guys haven't had a chance to go watch it yet? At least the original? And, like, what does it mean anything to you in terms of horror and its significance?
For me personally, like, I kind of have a similar upbringing as you, Letona. You know, I grew up through Catholic school, so I don't think that played a role in it. I mean, it was somewhat taboo, but mainly for the factor of just, like even today, like, my mom's super scared of it. I wouldn't want to watch it, like, no matter the subject matter. She just, it's like, she thinks it's a scary movie. So, I mean, I haven't seen it fully, but of course, I've seen, like, the most famous scenes from it. You know, I've listened to the music of it. I don't know, I would say it's more of, like, kind of like a small taboo in a way, especially with, like, how I was brought up. Really
quick, and I mean, just because you mentioned, you know, that you've seen, like, the most famous scenes, I'm curious, are most of those scenes, like, the possession and her and Reagan in the bed?
Yeah, most of those scenes were those, and then as well as the a couple of ones from the priest, like, in the beginning of the film, and then some from I think the mom around the house as, like, the happenings are going on.
Okay, so you've gotten a good sprinkle. I was just curious about that, because I feel like most people kind of remember when they think of The Exorcist, it really is that last half hour. And I'll just kind of toss back to you, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up Catholic, being Mexican American I'm a first generation Mexican only child. So yeah, I grew up, I went to Catholic school, I went to Sunday school, so it was more of like, well, you know, maybe I was already kind of fed up with, like, I mean, like, everything being kind of centered on religion. So I think personally, I just never had an interest in watching The Exorcist. But I mean, I'm also the same way with anything supernatural, but which is kind of funny because I do believe in ghosts, so go figure, I guess. Same. But I just think that it really seems fictionalized, even though, you know, they always say that this is based on a true story. The thing about fiction and the thing about film is that it's always just exaggerated just for the sake of it being a film. So, and yeah, I have seen those clips, so... And, you know, the general consensus, and this is not really my opinion, but, like, the general consensus that I hear a lot about the original Exorcist is that it's really just like it's not even about the Exorcist. Like, those scenes don't even come till later from what I hear. So I think that's very different compared to the modern Exorcist movies. I think they center that more on the horror, the fictionalized horror. So I just don't think that there's a need to watch it anymore, personally. So that's just my viewpoint. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like it's more for me because I've seen so many clips of it, and it's one of like it's not my opinion about it, but like going through cinematography in school and everything and having those classes, like we did, like when we went to the horror genre or how to like more of like the low lighting type of stuff, we went to The Exorcist. Like there's a lot of shots that my cinematography professor showed me from The Exorcist, because like it's one of the most, at the time it was one of the most well shot horror films.
Really?
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, the movie's like absolutely gorgeous. It just had like a really great 4K release that, if you're a physical media collector, you should, I guess, 100% buy.
By the way, so if you guys are not familiar with Joshua Letona, he is a nerd. He's literally the reason why, these two are the reason why we created this podcast in the first place, because we always joke about how much of a snob they both are. He's a snob in his own right, but he's a snob because he literally collects everything physically, which I admire. I love it, but he's just a nerd.
Hey,
but anyway.
You know what? I just really appreciate a quality disc. I have a whole thing about streaming, and this could be a whole other episode one day.
You know what's so funny, though? I'm a snob in my own way because I wait till things go into streaming, so that's the reason why I haven't watched Oppenheimer yet.
That's your guilty sin right there.
Yeah.
That is my guilty sin, but hey, I don't care. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Exorcist.
I mean, speaking on the new one, too, I haven't seen the new one. I don't believe Brian has either. I think Letona's been the only one that's seen it.
I'm telling you guys, he's already seen it.
I saw it. Okay, look. There's a lot to say about that movie. I really just wanted to center the discussion because it doesn't seem to have a connection with the audience today. I really thought if you told me like, okay, you're bringing back Chris McNeil, the mother from the original movie. You're kind of doing this modern day thing. It's directed by David Gordon Green, who I know is a divisive figure in horror already because of the last two Halloween movies. But you kind of have this team together. You have an original cast member coming back. You have otherwise a solid cast in the rest of that movie. And like it's like coming out like basically the first week of October. And in my mind, that sounds like the recipe for a smash hit. And I think, this isn't the downplay, like, clearly I think the critical reviews have had, like, a big effect on it. I think that's definitely a giant factor. But I just have to wonder a little bit, like, you guys haven't seen it. I've never, like, tried to show it to my brothers. And I maybe that's another guiltiness on my part for not, showing that to them. But, like, how many people are doing that, Like I said, like, my parents talk about it, but they never showed it to me. I had to go seek it out. And, my grandparents talk about it, but they all talk about it with this, it's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And watching it in 2023, because I barely watched it for the first time this year, I was like, you guys were already hinting at it, but I was kind of shocked about how, like, 90 minutes of this movie was just kind of a standard drama. And it's a really great drama. It totally builds you up for this amazing, the actual exorcism. But I was sitting there wondering, like, I don't, if you told people this is the scariest movie they've ever seen, and they come watch this and they find it's like a very serious drama about the mother trying to do whatever she can to save her daughter, and a lot of that becomes like them going to the hospital, looking at, going to go see psychologists and stuff like that. Like, I'm not saying it's not going to connect with a certain, like, audience, but like, I don't know, a general audience would really find that in the way that they were excited to go see Halloween 2018. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is a little bit like I said, I spoke to my partner and I told her, I was like, are your sisters excited? Because they're about 15 and 12 or 13. And they were a little like, well, and she said they're down to watch it, but like it's not on the top of their list. And this is where I think I can just kind of bring this up, is like Five Nights at Freddy's, which comes out in like 3 weeks, right at the end of October, is already tracking pretty high for what a movie I thought like maybe came a little too late.
Do you think so?
Well, just because like where the Five Nights at Freddy's, like, the hype was like maybe 5 years ago, right?
Sure.
But it's clear like I was wrong. The hype is still clearly there, and despite like there being like a lot of knockoffs, like I don't know if you saw that Nick Cage one, Willy's Wonderland.
Yeah.
And that came out and was clearly riffing on that, but like that had no effect clearly on like what's going to probably be the biggest horror movie of the year. So I don't know. I think we can get a little into that about just like how Five Nights at Freddy's looks to be kind of the king of horror this year when it's all said and done, and how The Exorcist just really, I don't know. I don't think it's it's finding the audience it used to, and I wonder a little bit if it's just if there's a lack of tangibility, or if there's a lack of like a Michael Myers or Freddy. Like it doesn't have a face, you know, necessarily. Like people remember Reagan's face from that, and they use it a lot, but like, you know, these are two different girls in this movie.
Definitely.
You know, like, no one remembers the name Pazuzu, which is the name of the demon from the original. Like, these aren't things that people think about. So, like, I don't know, just
I think
steal from there.
I think it's a different generation, too. Because I think when that came out, wasn't there, like, a whole, like, media discourse with, like, paranormal stuff during the time? Like, there was a lot of other content coming out. Like,
Well, it was a big reactionary time, especially.
Yeah. That's why.
The internet wasn't the thing, so I feel like that also contributed a lot to.
Yeah, so that's why. So I feel like that could be a reason, because it was more reactionary, you know, especially it dealt with religion, you know, dealt with, you know, Christianity, Catholicism. So I think that was a big thing to me. That's how I first found out about it too. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen The Omen. And like a lot of the horror films of that, like the more paranormal horror films of that time, of that like time period and stuff, they're not really like, it's not like the ghost or like the demons coming out right away. There's like a build up to it. It's just a regular drama, and I think that's what kind of made them scarier, was because it was showing everyday life and how it was slowly just infecting itself within everyday life, and how like the normal procedures that we go to, like, you know, for feeling sick or, you know, have the same type of symptoms that, you know, these kids and these characters in these movies are having, we'll go to the doctor too, we'll go seek out a therapist, we'll go seek out a psychologist, etc., etc. And like, if that doesn't work, where do you turn to after that? Like, what other experts are there? So I think that's probably what the horror lies in, was just that like kind of subconscious, like
Psychological
horror.
psychological,
like, oh, like this could happen to us, like, you know, like especially since you have like a certain groups have a certain faith about certain things too. I think that's what really lies in the most, where nowadays, and not to say that not many people are religious anymore nowadays, but I feel like everything's just so saturated with the media and social media nowadays, that it's just different.
Yeah.
And it just works differently now. I mean, for me, I saw the trailer during premiere Oppenheimer opening night, and I think you said there was a little different reaction, but my theater, we were like, and you can see everyone's faces trying to figure out what it was, because they like, a friend of mine next to me was like, this feels so familiar, because the way they did it, you know, with the Exorcist theme song, like casually getting like, they're like teasing you with it, and then finally they get into it. At the end of it, everyone was like holy shit, like whoa, like damn, like that looks good, like people were like just exclaiming in the theater for it. Yeah. But I don't think that was the same reaction.
No, my reaction was the exact opposite. I was there Saturday, like 2:00 for Oppenheimer at the City Walk. Yeah. Which is like one of the few IMAX 70 millimeter theaters we have here in this town. And the reaction was, the trailer played, it sounded silent, and then once the date came up and it was like coming, whatever date it's coming, someone shouted out in the crowd, boo David Gordon Green. And the whole theater laughed, and I was like, oh, this is the vibe. Like, I think this is what people are feeling. Like, I think there's
do you think they were just booing the horror film itself as the Exorcist sequel, or they were booing David Gordon Green as the director of it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Previous, not so
Halloween movies.
Yeah.
I try not to think too much that, like, the online social reaction is indicative of like what's going on out there, but I do think, especially after when I walked out of Halloween Ends, I was like, this is going to be a divisive movie no matter who sees it, because some people are going to go to really expect that movie for some Michael Myers, and that movie does not have a lot of Michael, and we don't have to break down like our whole analysis of that movie. And I have thoughts about David Gordon Green. I don't think he's as bad as people are putting him to be, but it's very clear now to me that, like, I think he may have put a nasty taste in some people's mouth. I think Halloween I don't think is dead. I think some people are acting like it's a dead franchise and it's been beaten to a pulp. but it's not even the worst the franchise has ever been.
Mm.
You know, there are worse like Halloween movies in that franchise.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do think there's a little bit of just like a combination of people don't want to see David Gordon Green, at least David Gordon Green horror, and The Exorcist just doesn't have that cachet like it used to. And maybe it's just I would say I'm a pretty good defender of Blumhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I think they take a lot of swings, but maybe this just wasn't the right property for them.
I don't know. I think also that the marketing just wasn't there either, because I saw the trailer twice, only in theaters, and I didn't see it till very recently, like on social media or like just like an ad on streaming on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and then when I talked to like other friends of mine, they're like, "Oh, there's a new Exorcist coming out." Like for the people who weren't going to theaters regularly, they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that also could play a reason in it. Because I mean, I thought the trailer from the theater was really great, and then when I went to see it the second time with a friend of mine, like she even exclaimed like, "Holy shit!" Like, wow, like that was intense from the trailer alone. I personally thought the trailer was really well edited, and like in a few years of trailers, you know, all trailers aren't the greatest. So I thought it was a really well edited trailer, like really well put together. So I don't know. I was very surprised with the discourse, but then again, it's a whole different time period, and there was no lead up to it. Like I didn't hear at all they were making a new Exorcist sequel. Like I only found out when I saw the trailer. So,
I mean, I'm a personal victim of seeing a really great trailer and then having the actual final plot be like the worst thing ever.
That happens to all of us. Yeah.
Personally, I don't watch trailers for movies. I personally don't. So I think it kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, I'd rather just go in blind.
I do try to do that with a lot of, especially horror movies. Like,
Yes.
I saw X. I was like, it looks like it has a stacked cast, and I went in blind and found myself surprised.
So surprised about the casting for that.
But I think what I did want to like, especially I would say is as our resident Shudder subscriber, and I think you watch the most horror movies out of all of us. I mean, like,
Yes.
I would say maybe you have a little bit more of the pulse on like what horror is today. I think, and especially I was thinking about it and just sort of like where we've been and what exactly is like hot right now, and I think the rise with the kind of elevated horror, right? Like with Babadook and The Witch, and
Babadook was good.
But like there was this like combo of like, and Hereditary, right? Like this 3-hit combo of like, oh, horror can be so much more now.
Yeah.
And
I still can't rewatch Hereditary. I've only seen it once in theaters, and I still can't rewatch that.
Or even like movies, even like the mainstream, like, because I think what I realize is that horror is being done really well in both sides of the medium, which is Hollywood AAA, and then also like the indie horror.
Right.
I mean, I just got done watching VHS 85, which just came out this past Friday, and one of the last segments, the anthologies for that, is the director of Sinister.
Oh, okay. Wait, so Scott Derrickson.
Scott Derrickson directed one of the anthologies, like the segments for VHS 85, and I thought to myself, it seems pretty like familiar, like, and then I found out that it's actually kind of canon to the Sinister movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
see, that, again, another low budget, which honestly like feels very similar to Believer. The most recent Exorcist. Like when now that you bring up Derrickson, and a movie that I think works really well in the modern scape of like what is horror today. Like I really enjoy Sinister, and now you're making me definitely think I gotta go do my homework and go watch the new VHS.
Yeah. Which, by the way, no spoilers. It's okay. The general consensus is that people enjoy this one more than VHS 99 and then 95, I believe, is the other one. The last two that came out. But I honestly think, I mean, there's some good moments for sure. It's a good. Some of it kind of a little stereotypical in terms of the 80s, but it's fine. It's fine. It works fine, and I enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm curious to see what you guys think if you guys watch it. But the fact that these type of directors can go from like AAA, I keep saying AAA because I'm used to video games being called AAA, but blockbuster Hollywood movies, and then there is also the indie. That's the thing also as well. A24, like, well, before I used to think A24 was just a bunch of indie movies, but now it's like it's kind of getting into like the mainstream general audiences are just watching these movies now. Before it used to be that you would have to scope out this movie and you would want to watch it. It's because you would want to watch it, but now it's like people are watching these movies without even realizing that it's an A24 movie. I don't know. I'm kind of it's a lot of thoughts that I have. I don't know if there's anything that comes into mind about what I just said.
I mean, I guess like more specifically, I was thinking like just like what do you think like the pulse is on horror right now? Like what do you think everyone's enjoying? Like what are filmmakers making? Like what's the brand? Are we like or have we just like transitioned away?
Yeah, I think
experimental horror.
I think it's been very experimental. There's such a range, like how you said earlier, Brian, that there's Hollywood and there's indie, and then there's a bunch more in between. And
there's like a nice pipeline to it as well, because somebody might do pretty well in the indie aspect, and then they transition into horror, like Hollywood horror, which is fine, and that's great, and it works really well. Then there's also like Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Get Out and the Us movies just came out to Netflix as of the time of this recording, which is great. I mean, it's another medium. It's another like way for people to watch these movies if they haven't done so already. But comedy, even people who did comedy before can do horror pretty well as well, which is very distinguishable in a lot of projects like recently too.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually just brought up Jordan Peele, because I was just at Universal Studios.
He's wearing the shirt too, by the way. I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah, it's a Nope t-shirt.
Yep. Nope.
From Super Yakis. Please give them support. I was just there, and I forget that Monkey Paw Productions and Jordan Peele like are over at Universal, and it like I like Nope and Us and even Get Out, obviously, which was in talked about in the Oscars, all three of those movies are fantastic, and all from the mind of Jordan Peele.
Yes.
And everything even that Monkey Paw Productions has done so far, I really enjoyed Candyman from Nia DaCosta, and I'm just wondering a little bit, just Universal is clearly, as divisive as they can be with still making the Fast and Furious movies and some more schlocky blockbusters, they have clearly room for directors to grow. I mean, they just did Oppenheimer. They have Jordan Peele there. Blumhouse does low budget stuff and is willing to take risks. I just feel like to kind of bring this conversation back to center and maybe put a nice little button on it so we can kind of go to our other topics. It's just a little bit maybe this is why I say maybe The Exorcist just wasn't the right home Universal wasn't the right home for The Exorcist, maybe. We bring up A24, and maybe it just would have been in a little bit better hands with someone who, I don't know.
I mean, there's also we discussed this before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the supernatural aspect either, because Talk to Me also is also similar, but I think that's more word of mouth as well.
Yeah.
From when because you kept talking about it too, and I knew about it, but I just never I haven't bothered to watch it until
I found out about it through the directors, Rock Raka, because I followed them on YouTube, and I've been following them on YouTube since high school.
Yeah, and also another thing too, they came from YouTube. These guys are for Talk to Me. So
I highly suggest you check out their channel too.
Yes,
they are very funny. But they stopped doing YouTube
we'll link it too.
to do this film. So they're still coming out with YouTube videos, but it was great to see the growth, because they're really great creators. And they do have potential. And that's the beauty about just the media in general. It's everyone who, no matter if you start on YouTube or social media, it's storytelling. Storytelling kind of is an umbrella full of a bunch of stuff underneath it. So wherever you start off with, you can always just grow. You can do films. You can get to certain points. It's just just learn, you make mistakes and you keep going with it.
Yes. Well, it's kind of funny, because this is also the same way with our podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of just doing it a makeshift way of making sure we do this podcast in a way we can.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of modern technology nowadays, is that we're able to, our own pocket cameras, which is our phones, our iPhones, we can start recording content. I mean, there's even films in the past that have been done so, but I think even more now with horror, the you know, experimental. Everything is experimental because there's other mediums of being able to showcase your work.
Yeah.
Whether that's YouTube, Vimeo, MySpace, or whatever it could be, man. It could be anything.
Does
so
it even exist
but
anymore?
like it does actually.
It does?
But yeah. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's making horror branch out, and I think that's why people are more willing to watch horror than they did 10 years ago.
Especially, I think you guys are hitting a nail on the head, and I'm glad you brought up Talk to Me, which is, like I said, I have my thoughts about Believer. I don't think it's as bad as people are claiming it is. But if you told me you have to pick one possession movie this year, it's gonna have to be Talk to Me, and I think it feels more modern. It has like a more unique twist,
and it's original. It's original.
But you know what? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and it's actually like pivots us nicely to our next topic, and I we're talking about like doing things indie and how we're doing stuff makeshift. And I know that what we're gonna talk about next is a bit more of a bigger budget movie than like any horror movie has ever been cost. But like, so like, kind of our next topic was just gonna be about The Creator, which kind of did like a nice little or not nice little, a kind of sad flop at the box office. And I kind of wanted this to be a nice little easy segue, because we were talking about it in our kind of pre-meeting stuff, is a little bit how The Creator was shot on, and I'm not gonna like fill in those details, and I'll let you guys do it right now, but wasn't shot on any like kind of fancy camera per se.
Cinema camera, yeah.
And so I know you have thoughts, Mejia, so I'm gonna let you.
Well, so The Creator was shot mainly, as far as I can tell, I think maybe 90% or just the majority of it was shot on the Sony FX3, which, if you don't know what that camera is, it's like a small little camera, like almost the size of a phone. Like, it's tiny.
Yeah.
It's a great camera, though. It's an actual cinema camera. It's part of the Sony cinema lineup of cameras, so it is a full-frame cinema camera. But I think that's I don't know where the discourse kind of originally began from, but a lot of people, at least in the film community, are like kind of like clamoring about it, where it's like, oh, we shot an FX3, and some people are like, oh, it doesn't matter about the camera. And I agree, it doesn't matter about the camera, because you do a lot with even like a Sony A7 III, or lower level. I mean, every camera nowadays kind of shoots 4K, so any low level can get the job done pretty much, as long as you know how to use it properly, and light, and everything else in front of the camera that matters the most. However, I believe that it really makes a difference that The Creator was shot on this camera, because this camera is only about like maybe 3K, 4K around there.
It's cheaper than like your typical cinema camera, for sure.
The typical cinema camera is like an Arri Alexa or like some type of Red Giant. Like it's like these unbelievably $10,000 or like $8,000 plus camera. So the fact that this 3K, 4K, which is still a pretty penny. Don't get me wrong, it's still expensive, but it's more durable than getting one of those high-end cameras that Hollywood mainly uses. So I think that's what the biggest thing is just that, like, you don't need a $8,000 plus camera to do this stuff anymore. Like I wouldn't be surprised if, not even the years to come, like very shortly, $2,000 camera that does 4K and just S-Log.
Oh yeah,
because it gets a Hollywood picture. Like, I would not be surprised at that at all.
I totally agree. I mean, just personally, coming from like a person who mainly does photography, one of the first things I learned was that you can have like the most entry level budget camera, but as long as you know what you're doing in terms of lighting, lens choices, things like exactly,
crafting the image,
you can get it done. I mean, you can even get it done with an iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the direction. I'm not an iPhone shooter. I don't really agree with it, but what I would say is that iPhones do help out a lot now. And my biggest discourse is like, at least if you're shooting with the iPhone, at least try to learn like the camera settings, like the exposure triangle involved in getting a good image. Like at least learn that, because I know iPhones can do it automatically, but there's always that great way to just practice and learn with an iPhone, essentially. Yeah. So just nowadays, technology has evolved so much that almost anything's possible.
I guess that's why, like, they're saying like the camera shouldn't matter, but also it does. It kind of means the same thing. If now when I'm like listening to you guys, if I really think about it, because essentially it's saying like the camera doesn't matter because you can pick up anything. But it does matter because I think this is like a lesson for young filmmakers that you kind of always have to reinforce, like, right? Like, there's always going to be, like, new filmmakers coming up, and I feel like that's the thing, right? They get nervous when they're like, well, you need, like, an $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 camera, or, like, you need to rent the highest equipment if you want that movie quality, and we're just saying that's not true.
Yeah,
you know? So, like, it's not that it doesn't matter, it's just that, like, we have to remind people that, like, no, if, like, the entry level is low, it's just about your skill with it, learning how to use that equipment and getting effectively what you're trying to do. And I'm sure the creator still has like a bunch of other things to make that film look as pretty as it does.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But that's what happens when, you know, you have the budget and someone's willing to give you a chance, a shot at it. And I think the creator, I haven't seen it, but I think the creator does a really good job showcasing that. However, too bad it's Hollywood, and because the box office is not really great, they might not give it another shot. But I mean, trust me, man. Once something does well in the box office, even if it's recorded on an iPhone, I mean, they're gonna give it a shot. They're gonna give it a chance.
Well, I mean, technically it has already, because Steven Soderbergh, he's already done movies with an iPhone.
Oh yeah,
There
was an indie. I remember I saw it on Netflix. Tangerine.
Tangerine. That was Sean Baker, I think, the guy who did the one with Willem Dafoe in Florida.
Oh, Florida Project.
Yeah, Florida Project. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I guess it's just like I thought this conversation would be just fun. Just remind people, like, you know, I know the creator is like an $80-90 million movie, but like, there's equipment being used in it that like people can just go and buy at Best Buy, right? Like
a camera store.
A camera store. But like, you know, like it's not something that you can't like just look out for.
Yeah, it's not like impossibly unattainable. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like they use these Ronins, you know, these Ronin gimbals with the Sony FX3. Those are pretty easily rentable. Like if you save or, you know, build enough funding, you can easily get some of the smaller rigs they had.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't think this conversation was going to go too long, but I just thought that it was worth talking about because, you know, the creator looks fantastic. I mean, we've seen the trailers, a lot of impressive shots, and it looks better than, like, stuff in, like, current day Marvel movies. You know, like, no, it really does.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm laughing. I mean, that's what I'm kind of
like, like, it's, you know, there's some, like, don't get me wrong, like, I think there's, like, some Marvel movies like Guardians and Black Panther that look really well shot.
Yeah.
But like, there's the creators, like it looks fantastic there, and they already have like clearly an eye because there's a lot of great shot composition. Mm-hmm. So like it was just something I thought was worth bringing up or talking about for that reason.
I think they did. I think for the creator they had two cinematographers. I forgot the main one's name, but then the other one that they had. I don't know if it was like fully credited as cinematographers. I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen like interviews and stuff and behind the scenes footage. But it was Greg Fraser, the guy who did Dune and the Batman.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, those, again, gorgeous looking movies.
I believe.
Like, arguably, the Batman might be the best shot superhero movie.
Yeah, the Batman was pretty gorgeous. Yeah.
It's a pretty gorgeous
The Batman's
movie.
great. I mean, it didn't get nominated for anything.
No.
Not much. I can't remember currently if it had a couple of nominations, but it is a gorgeous looking movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I just thought it was just fun to bring that up. And definitely, I knew you guys like knew enough about the camera stuff here to like get into that. And I just thought this could be like a good little, just as we kind of start rounding out our episode and we drive to our destination.
We have.
You know, it's still Halloween season. And instead of just like, you know, talking about like, oh, like, what is it that was really good this year, which we did in a demo that, you know, may or may not see the light of day one day. I just thought maybe like we could just kind of throw some recommendations out and some of our real personal favorite like Halloween movies, like what's like specifically the ones that you throw on during this season. So like, I don't know, Brian, I know you're like, again, the resident like horror guy for sure. So like, if you just have some like, throw some out there.
So my favorite movies to watch during Halloween. Let's see. Don't want me to interrupt, but do I park here?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Well, let's see. My favorite that comes to mind is Hell House, LLC. And that is I'm a sucker for found footage, so I mean, that is definitely one of my favorite movies to rewatch. Actually, it's one of those movies where I like to rewatch it with somebody if they never seen it, because I love to see their reaction. It's simple. It's basically just about a documentary where people are trying to figure out why on opening day of a haunted house, right? A haunted maze, kind of like Universal Horror Nights and things like that. Why 15 people died that night, and it's like a lead up to it, and then you kind of see what's happening, but it's also left to the, up for interpretation as to what happened. So it's mysterious and it's great, and I love it. That's the first one that comes into mind. Train to Busan is one good one too.
Yeah,
what about you?
For me, I would say I have a few, technically a few. One that comes to mind first is Halloween, the original. It's always a great one to just kind of toss on, even as kind of like a background movie, just to watch. That's great. For more of like a fall season, like more fall / Halloween season. For some reason, I've been watching Harry Potter a lot. That's not horror at all. I mean, there's some horror aspects towards the end of it.
It does give some like fall vibes.
Yeah, but it's more for like the fall vibes of it. So for fall vibes that way, but for Halloween, the movie, the original, that's always a pretty classic to toss on.
Yeah, I think you definitely took one of mine. Halloween 1978 is always a classic. But I think for me personally, this was one that like I saw it on Netflix all those years ago. Was just the original Trick or Treat, which I took you guys to see for the first time.
That was great. Actually, that's another good one.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's just that film means a lot to me. That when I was like kind of like in middle school and I saw that movie for the first time, it truly felt like a piece of horror that I really enjoyed. Like I didn't grow up on horror movies a lot, so it just felt like the perfect choice. And I love its sort of anthology style. I love the short little stories. By the way, you can just park anywhere.
Yeah.
I love the short little stories. I show it to I love to show it to new people every year, and I find that they're always so surprised how much they enjoyed it. My partner doesn't love horror movies, but it was one that she really enjoyed.
Trick or Treat?
Yeah, and she loves to rewatch it with me now every year. And I just feel like that's my personal pick. Again, and this is it's divisive just on purely like, is it a Christmas movie or is it a Halloween movie? But The Nightmare Before Christmas was also formative for me.
Yeah.
It's a great musical. The animation's great. Can't forget that it's Henry Selick that directed it. It just clearly brings such a unique style and love to those characters, and why it's such a long-standing like Hot Topic, Goth Kids, and all that jazz.
I mean, speaking of animation, horror films too. This is very old, more kid, but if you guys remember it, what's the Haunted House? I think.
Haunted Mansion?
Monster House.
No, Monster House. There you go.
Monster House.
Monster House. That was a good one. That's a good one to toss.
That one came out like in 05, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Super long time
remember
ago. Yeah.
Wow.
but
I actually never seen it.
It has an incredible aesthetic.
Yeah.
It has like a perfect. This goes into my theory that I think kids should be scared a little bit more, just because you get used to it and then you grow up and you become horror heads like us. But yeah, that's a great one too.
Don't be like me.
Yeah,
kids.
no, Monster House. I can't put this at Haunted House, but that's why I have you. The backup.
The backup. I have the
snob right here
in my brain.
Yeah.
I'm the least snobbiest of these snobs. So.
I don't know. That sounds pretty snobby coming from you.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're called the Unemployed Film Snobs.
But yeah.
But yeah, any last thoughts about what we talked about now that we're parked?
Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
This was our first episode, so I hope it's coming out okay.
Yeah, hope it went well. There's a lot of maybe we'll share some BTS content of our struggle.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I was said in the beginning. With media nowadays and technology, it all grows.
So that was our show for today, guys. I appreciate you tuning in, and if you have any thoughts, please comment down below. And make sure you subscribe, and we'll be coming out with these episodes pretty much every week. So
I think Tuesday, Wednesday basis, right?
We don't know yet.
Those, yeah.
Stay tuned for that. But
follow our social media.
Follow our.
What's our
Unemployed Film Snobs. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and we're gonna be
Instagram.
on Instagram. Okay. So that was our show. Appreciated it. You guys have a good one. Take care.
This has been the Unemployed Film Snobs.
I'm Brian.
I'm Joshua Mejia.
And I'm Joshua Letona.
And I'll see you later, snobs. Bye.
Bye.